When I was a kid growing up in the old Brooklyn neighborhood of Cleveland, I was always in awe of my 14 and 15-year-old friends when they would come home from fishing Lake Erie with buckets full of yellow perch. All of my fishing up until then was for bullheads and bluegills in our neighborhood ponds. One day, the older guys asked me to go with them. Needless to say, I didn't sleep a wink the night before. Back then, we got around by riding the CTS bus. So there we were, 6 a.m. in the morning, waiting for our first bus. We rode the State Road bus to Denison Avenue, transferred, and then went to the end of the line to West 65th and Detroit. Then the fun began. We had to cross a train trestle about 50 feet in the air, something like in the movie Stand By Me. We went through a dark, dimly lit tunnel under the shoreway. When we came out, there was Lake Erie. The first stop was the bait and tackle store for emerald shiners. Back then, 25 cents got you a generous scoop of minnows. With our bait buckets full, we went to see Captain Jack, who had a boat, and for 25 cents each, he would run us over the cut to the outer breakwall. What a character. The breakwall was made of large stone quarried rocks piled high to protect the harbor. Climbing over made you feel like a mountain goat. After walking a bit, the older boys stopped and said this is their spot, so we baited up and cast out into the lake. Within minutes, we started catching perch, freshwater drum, also known as sheep's head, rock bass, and catfish. Some guys kept all the fish they caught, others just kept the perch. We had a blast, and now it was time to head home. We had to go back the same way we came. First, Captain Jack in his boat, then through the dimly lit tunnel, over the railroad trestle, and back to the bus. By now, it was rush hour. Picture this: a half-dozen kids with fishing poles, tackle boxes, lunch boxes, 5-gallon buckets of smelly fish, getting on the bus full of people going home from work. I like to fish anywhere for anything that swims, river, lake, or ocean. I've tried them all. I've been teaching kids to fish for a long time. Ken Strauss and I started a program for kids at Plum Creek South back in the late 80s. Our kids would even help with the casting contest. I really enjoy seeing the kids catch their first fish all by themselves. After being taught how to rig their own pole, cast, set the hook, and take the fish off the hook, they are all set for a life of fishing. Recommend for beginner fishermen that you start with using a closed face reel. That is where the spool is. All you do is you push the button, and as you cast it, the line flies in the water as you let go of the button with your thumb, and then you reel it up. For beginner fishermen, it's always easier to use live bait. Live bait seems to work better. I love to volunteer at the park fishing programs because it is so much fun for me to watch people fish and be outdoors with all of our magnificent Medina County plants and animals, even if the fish aren't biting. So instead of being bored, why don't you watch the minnows, count dragonflies, catch crayfish, listen to birds, or have a quiet chat with a friend you bring along. My favorite fishing is for channel catfish in rivers, bluegills and walleye, and pike in lakes. Catfish and walleye like to bite my spinners and spoons. Bluegills like my redworms and artificial flies, tied by young fishermen I know. I also fish for largemouth and smallmouth bass with a plastic or rubber worm. Serious fishers should learn to swim and move around carefully and quietly so they don't fall in. Also, fish are sensitive to vibrations, such as dropped fishing poles in boats and running and stomping along the docks or banks of lakes and streams. When you see your bobber go down, make sure you set the hook. So essentially what you're doing is you're lifting up on the fishing rod and setting the hook in the fish's mouth. Over the years, I have received much satisfaction and enjoyment working as a volunteer for the Medina County Park District. I have especially enjoyed the passport, the fishing programs, and the fishing derbies. It is very rewarding to help a boy or girl to learn to fish. Many children have never fished before or held a fishing rod. Children give their full attention not only while fishing, but in the classroom setting as well. I find the girls sometimes focus a little more and catch on quicker than the boys, but everyone has a great time. When you're fishing for small fish that have small mouths, make sure you use a small hook. Maybe a little bit smaller than small. The reason I like to fish is it gets me outdoors, it requires me to focus, and I forget about my concerns, and it teaches me patience. Also, I enjoy the hunt, love the sound of flowing water, and I enjoy having a fish bite the fly that I tied. It's basically periods of quiet and calmness interrupted by extreme joy. Catching a fish seems to automatically put a smile on my face. I've spent many days fishing and getting sunburned on Sandusky Bay. It sure was a lot of fun catching perch back then. I never fished much until my children were grown. It was actually my daughter who suggested we take an all-female class on fly fishing. The first trout I caught and healed hooked me for life. Wanting to learn more, I joined 3 different fishing clubs. Most of the time, I was the only female in attendance, sitting in the back of the room. Eventually, I got to know some of the members, and they generously shared fishing tips with me. I attended lots of fishing expos, where I was introduced to a lady angler who was demonstrating fly tying. We became great friends and still fish together today. My favorite fish include rainbow, brown, wild cutthroat, palomino, golden trout, and other fish as well, but trout are definitely my favorite. I always try different ways of fishing, from wading in rivers and streams, to floating in float tube waders, to fishing in lakes, oceans, and ponds. I enjoy learning about the tradition of fly fishing, especially learning about women in fly fishing. I volunteer a lot, trying to share my passion of fishing with others regardless of their abilities. I always like meeting other volunteers as well. I felt I wanted to find a way to give back and help others. I heard about Project Healing Waters for disabled veterans. As part of the program, one of the activities the veterans learn is fly tying. I have also helped with casting for recovery. At the kids' fishing programs, I do a fly tying demonstration as part of my fishing presentation. I explain what materials I use and what flies imitate. Matching the hatch is a term you will hear in the fly fishing circle. It is the act of presenting the right fly in the correct manner to fool a selectively feeding trout. To do this, you must be able to identify the insect hatching, be familiar with its behavior, size, and shape, and to a certain extent, color. Definitely having a working knowledge of mayflies is important. Fly anglers do not judge the methods of fellow anglers, and they share their knowledge of skills and techniques and promote the code of angling ethics to others. Like, for example, catch and release is an important component because overharvesting can have an effect on fish populations. Protecting wildlife by picking up discarded fishing line and bait cups, even using barbless hooks, is important because it helps to keep the trout population healthy. Fly fishing is a privilege and a responsibility. Fly fishers minimize their impact and, in simplest terms, leave the fishery better than they found it. For beginner fishermen, the easiest fish to catch are bluegill.
The easiest fish to catch are bass.
The easiest fish to catch are bluegill.
The easiest fish to catch are bass.
Would you mind? I'm trying to talk here. I am a member of a group of Medina County volunteers who help run all the park's fishing programs. From kids fishing camps and derbies to adult ice fishing clinics, we introduce, educate, teach different techniques, use of live bait and artificial baits, how to tie knots, and rig fishing poles. We also help kids and adults develop techniques that will help them become better fishermen. I've been fishing for over 65 years, and I grew up a block from the Sandusky River in northwest Ohio. and developed an interest in fishing at an early age. I remember the first perch my friend and I caught. We thought we discovered a new fish. Since perch have stripes that run up and down their sides, we naturally named the fish tigerfish. Imagine our disappointment when a veteran fisherman informed us that it was really a perch. Undeterred, we continued our adventure on the river catching carp, sheephead, white bass, catfish, bass, bullheads, perch, and even walleye. As I grew older, my desire to fish did not diminish. I have had 7 boats and have fished all over the United States, but mostly in Lake Erie and the Ohio Lakes. My favorite type of fishing is ice fishing, and I accumulated many gadgets to make fishing easier and more comfortable. So many that the fishing guys call me the Gadget Man, and I share many of these in our presentations. Our group works collectively together for our programs, and we offer the people of Medina County a quality program that is informative, useful, practical, and also humorous. We share many stories, and most of all of them are true. You know how fishermen are. I enjoy doing the fishing programs because I feel that I have a lot of knowledge I can pass on to both young and old fishermen. I really like seeing the expressions on a youngster's face when they catch their fish, and everything comes together for them. Fishing can be a lifelong enjoyment and an opportunity to get out and enjoy nature whether or not you catch a fish. For more advanced fishermen, I recommend trying lures. My favorite lure is what is called a spinnerbait. So you cast it out, reel it in. As you reel it in, the blades turn. The blades create a lot of flash in the water. For extra flash, you need extra blades. Talk about a lot of flash on this one. This is my childhood story about the fish that didn't get away. When I was about 8 years old, my dad took me fishing with him down to the Rocky River. It was in the Cleveland Metro Parks, where the river flows into Lake Erie. There was a boat ramp where you put your boats into the water and where we were fishing. I think we propped up our fishing poles up on the wall right next to the river. Suddenly, my rod tip goes down, and I grabbed the rod before it fell into the water. I remember it feeling like it was snagged on the bottom, but just then, the line started moving upstream. I thought I had something big on the line. I hung onto the pole with everything I had, and I tried to reel it in, but the fish would have none of that. My dad, seeing all this, was getting very excited. He let me fight the fish by myself, but I think he felt that the fishing line was going to break. My dad had me walk over to the boat ramp, with the fish still on the line. Then he followed the line into the water up to his waist. He helped me land the fish right on the boat ramp. That was the biggest fish I had ever seen. Yet alone caught. It was a 6 to 7 pound carp. It seemed almost as big as me at the time. It was a lot of fun catching that fish with my dad, and we still talk about it and laugh about it to this day. I remember my dad being just as excited as I was with me catching that fish. For advanced fishermen as well, I recommend a bait casting rod. Most people use these once, and they never use them again. The key is to keep your thumb on the spool. So as you push the button down with your thumb, you move your thumb over to the spool, cast it, and as soon as it hits the water, before it hits the water, you put your thumb on the spool, or else you'll get this, which is called bird's nest. So when the fish are active, I fish a spinnerbait. So you can fish this pretty fast, or if the water is very warm. When the fish are not as active, I switch to what is called a plastic worm. If the fish are inactive, say a front went through, bluebird skies, no clouds at all in the sky, a plastic worm is a lure that you want to fish very slowly. I use a Mr. Twister keeper hook, so the barb goes in the top, the hook goes into the side. I also put a slip sinker on the top to add a little weight, so the fish will not feel this as they bite a hold of the worm. So if you feel any tension on the line whatsoever, you set the hook. My favorite colors are purple, blue, and black.
And pumpkin seed.
The funniest story that Ken tells is about the time that he was ice fishing and he threw bluegill that he was catching behind him. He didn't even realize that a great blue heron was behind him eating the fish as he threw him onto the ice. Another funny story that Ken always tells is about the time that he was on Lake Erie with a friend. They were looking at a fish finder and the screen was filled with fish. They spent hours in the same spot trying to catch the fish, and no luck. They went home and parked the boat in the garage, and the fish finder was still on, and the screen still was filled with fish. They all realized that it was on demo mode the whole time. During the kids' fishing camps, I always talked to kids about bass fishing and some of the favorite lures that I used. And then I would take the kids down to the pond and show them how to cast the rod that I was using and how to use the lures that I taught them about. Never did I catch a fish, and for years, Joe Denardi joked with me about not catching a fish during my demonstration. And then finally one year, he was standing right next to me as I casted with all the kids aligned on the shore, and a bass followed the lure, and I caught the fish. It was like something you see on a TV show. So we both looked at each other and laughed. I've been fishing since I've been 5 years old. Fishing is such a positive outlet for me my whole life. I worked at McDonald's to afford a boat when I was 16 years old and grew up fishing Ladue Reservoir in Auburn, Ohio. I'm so blessed today to be able to give back and teach kids about fishing and what a great outlet it is in life. Even if fish aren't caught, it's just great being outside with family and friends, enjoying the day. A lot of times, I'm paying attention more to the birds that are flying by than the fish biting my line.